What do you do when you're feeling overwhelmed? Well, we get a great description of this from David here in Psalm 55 today. He takes us on a journey through the psalm, and maybe you can resonate with different emotions and attempts that David goes through. To begin with, he decides that he will look inwards. He'll look at himself and he'll look at how he feels when he's overwhelmed and things are troubling him. And verse 2, he says, "My thoughts trouble me." Well, of course our thoughts trouble us when we look inwardly and we're overwhelmed by a particular situation. And that generally doesn't help, does it? It just makes us more anxious. So then he decides to go a different route. You get this from verse 6. "Oh, that I had the wings of a dove to fly away." And so he talks about how he wishes he could escape the situation, flee from it. If only I could just fly away and leave all these troubles behind me. But he knows that's not a realistic position for him. For him at the time, he was king and he had these huge responsibilities. It was impossible for him just to escape out of the situation. And the same will be true of us, no matter what we're in and what we're facing. We can't just wish we were on the other side of the world where no one knew us. So what does he do next? Well, in the next few verses, he looks at everything around him. He looks at all his circumstances and he works out how he's going to try and face these fears. Can he muster up enough courage and strength? But no, that's no good either. Thankfully, in verse 16, he looks to God. And that's where we all need to land, don't we? When we're feeling overwhelmed. Now, undoubtedly, we will at times, we'll look to our feelings, we'll look to try and escape, or we'll look to try and solve them in our own strength. But ultimately, none of those things work. But look what happens in verse 16 when he looks to God and he trusts in him. Verse 17, he goes on, he says, "I know that God hears me." Verse 18, "I know that he ransoms me." And then he comes to this wonderful verse in verse 22. "Cast all your cares on the Lord, for he will sustain you. He will never let you be shaken. He'll never let you fall." What a wonderful promise. We know this because as Christians we've proved this again and again. But let's make sure we keep doing it, putting it into practice, casting all our cares on the Lord, believing that he will sustain us and never let us be shaken. Praise his name.